Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everybody today? So we're going to attempt to go through 4 chapters today. We're just going to basically be reading the chapters, and then at the end it talks about the feasts. And so probably next week, Lord willing, we'll cover those in more detail. For the most part, we'll just read through the law, and if anybody has, as we're going through, if anybody has any questions or comments or anything,
We're just going through Exodus 20.
20 through 23.
You got them all in a sheet. He didn't mark it. They're
I
all in
forgot to change the header.
Oh,
They're all in here. They're just only one.
Roger, would you like to pray?
Yes, that's great. Most gracious Father in heaven, we're so thankful for this day. Thank you for your greatness. And we thank you for your Son who gave it all for us, that we might come to thee and through the gospel of your making. We ask that thou continue to be with the church here, help us to do the right thing in truth and in spirit. We come to worship you this morning, also be with Brother Scott, he brings us our lesson this morning, and he might reflect what he studied. And help us to gain the knowledge that we need to know. So continue to be with us always, be with those who are sick and ill, be with those who are not here this day, that they might realize that they need you and your comfort. Be with us always, we ask this thing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so we'll just take turns reading, just read, however much you want. There's a lot of it here, so we're all gonna have an opportunity to read. So read until you get tired. Next person. Want to start? Stop that?
Yeah, Exodus 21, 20 verse 1. The gospel of these words saying, I am Jehovah your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the slave house. You shall have no other God before me. You shall not make for yourselves an idol, nor own anything that is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water beneath the earth. You shall not bow down to them, and you shall not serve them. For I, Jehovah your God, am a zealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, yet showing loving kindness and 2,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of Jehovah your God in vain, for Jehovah will not hold guilt with him who hates his name in vain.
Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day so as to sanctify it. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the 7th day is a Sabbath to Jehovah your God. You shall not do any work, you nor your son nor your daughter, your male servant nor your female servant, nor your cattle nor the sojourner with you who is within your gates. For in 6 days Jehovah made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it.
Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be extended upon the land which Jehovah your God is giving you. Verse 13. You shall not kill. 14. You shall not commit adultery. 15. You shall not steal. 16. You shall not testify with false testimony against your neighbor. Verse 17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servants, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor.
Exodus 20:18, and all the people witnessed the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, and when the people witnessed it, they trembled and stood at a distance. And they said to Moses, "You speak with us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak with us, so we do not die." And Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid, for God has come in order to test you, and in order that the fear of him may be before you, so that you do not sin."
Does anybody have any observations from that or any questions? One thing that kind of struck me is in verse 17 where it says not to covet all these things. That, to me, that means that we should be satisfied with whatever God has made us and whatever God has given us. And remember, we've been reading about like when Aaron and Miriam opposed Aaron, and really goes all the way back to Satan. Satan was dissatisfied with what he was. He was the number one angel, but he wanted to be God. He wanted to be something more than what he was. And so that's kind of the root of all the problems. A lot of false prophets have these kinds of problems. Even Judas, he wanted money and things like that. So whenever we're not satisfied with whatever God has, his provision for us, that's a big problem. So that's what I get out of that coveting. Go ahead.
Exodus 20:21. And the people stood at a distance, and Moses drew near to the deep darkness where God was. And Jehovah said to Moses, "Thus shall you say to the children of Israel, you yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven. You should not make other gods besides me, gods of silver or gods of gold. You shall not make for yourselves. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and you shall sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen, in every place where I cause my name to be. Remember, I will come to you and bless you. And if you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stones. For if you lift up your tool upon it, you have polluted it. Neither shall you go up by steps to my altar, so that your nakedness may not be uncovered on it."
So here, hewn stones are cut. So what he's saying here is that if you're going to make an altar to him, you make it out of earth, or if you're going to use a stone, you just go get some rocks and you just use that as the altar. In other words, what it means is that we can't put any of our natural effort into our worship. Remember, like in the New Testament, it says, if we worship God according to the doctrines and traditions, the teachings and traditions of men, if we do it to our natural ability, it's in vain. He rejects that.
Yeah, so what that refers to in the Old Testament is, I guess, is Ephesians 5:19 through 22, where as far as sing to yourself in psalms and hymns, and not the trumpet, organ, or so.
Yeah, just
Can't do
yeah, not putting any natural. To me, it might be that, but I take it more of, we have a lot of throughout Christianity, there are a lot of traditions and doctrines and teachings of men, and people do things the way they want to do it. And I would relate it to Cain and Abel. Cain offered something to God that was according to his convenience and not what God wanted. God set a principle that you are to shed blood and sacrifice an animal to worship him, right? And instead, he was a farmer, so he gave him some of the first fruits, which we're going to learn later on is fine later on, but at the time, he hadn't asked for that. And so he rejected it. And so the fact that, if you hew a stone, if you cut it, if you do something to it, you're putting your efforts into it and making it how you want it to be. And if you do that, that's rejected. That God does not accept that. He wants to be worshipped, according to his own natural way. So he's the one that made the stone. He made the stone the way it is. Don't change it. Just leave it alone.
And build.
Yeah.
With the natural stone.
Yeah.
Exodus 21:1. Now these are the ordinances which you shall set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years, but in the 7th he shall go out free without payment to you. If he came in by himself, he should go out by himself. If he is a husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and shall bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever.
What's it called?
Hearing,
That's a thing you break ice with, it's a
Yeah,
straight
one of those.
prong.
Yeah,
A straight prong like it's nailed, but it's just
It's
a
got a
little sharp
very sharp
point that you
point.
break ice with.
Oh, okay.
so they basically pierce their ear, and they would
Yeah.
wear an ear.
that's all.
So
You
they
got this little sharp that you can
Right.
you can pull right through your earlobe.
Mhm.
No, this verse was used by the Confederacy in Virginia, where they passed a law that the master, if there's any production of children after they hire a servant or whatever, those servants become the property of the master. And they can, so the master can either sell the kids, sell the wife, do whatever, sell the guy, separate the family. And that's what they use to justify their position.
Did they forget about the other verse where it said, let them go out for 6 years?
Yeah.
That was the, what do you call it? You're a servant, you sign a contract for 6 years.
Indentured servant?
Indentured servant.
Yeah.
But both white people at that time were cheated out of their indentured servants.
Yeah, they changed.
The master would change the law and go to the, whatever to have it changed so they can maintain the guy, or sell them to somebody else where they have to do 6 more years. So,
Exodus 21:7. And if a man sells his daughter as a female servant, she shall go out as the male servants do. If she displeases her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. For he has no right to sell her to a foreign people, because he has dealt with her unfaithfully. And if he has designated her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the customs of the daughter. And if you take another woman for himself, he shall not diminish her food for her clothing or material rights. And if she does not do these 3 things for her, then she shall go out for nothing until without payment of silver. Exodus 21:12. He who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But he did not lie and wait for him, but God allowed him to fall into his hand. Then I will appoint you a place where he may flee. And if the man acts presumptuously toward his neighbor, or so as to slay him with guile, you will take him even from an altar to, so that he may die. My altar so that he may die. 21:15 also. Exodus 21:15. And he who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And he who kidnaps a man, whether he sells her or is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. And that he who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Exodus 21:18. And if a man contend and one strikes another with a stone or with his fist, but that he does not die, but remains in bed, he shall rise up and walk around us outside on a staff. Then he who strikes him shall be guiltless. He shall only pay for the loss of the time, unless he has made sure he was completely healed. Exodus 21:20, and if a man strikes his male servant or his female servant with a rod, and the servant dies under his hand, he shall surely be punished. But if he survives a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property. And I think they're talking about all slaves in this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop there. 21:22.
Exodus 21:22. And the men struggled together and they hit a pregnant woman, so that she has a miscarriage, but there is no further mishap. He shall surely be fined what the woman's husband shall impose upon him. And he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there is further mishap, then you shall give a life for life, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot, a burning for a burning, and a wound for a wound, a stripe for a stripe. Exodus 21:26. And if a man strikes the eye of his male servant or the eye of his female servant and destroys it, he shall let that one go free on account of that one's eye. And if he knocks out his male servant's tooth or his female servant's tooth, he shall let that one go free on account of that one's tooth.
Ray, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to, I didn't want to go outside of what we're talking about, but this says is, if there be further mishap, then you should give a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burning for a burning, a wound for a wound, a strike for a strike. What does that have, as far, okay, because there's a lot of things that I'm learning that I'm putting together, okay, that, and the reference from that to the New Testament, okay, which we've been able to find accordance pretty much with everything. And where is that in the New Testament when it comes up to, let's say,
Eye for an eye, that sounds good.
in the New Testament? Yeah, as far as, as far as, say, for instance, like you have your capital punishment now, and or the right to live, or God, thou shalt not, murder, and things like that.
So in the New Testament, when Jesus was, I think this was the Sermon on the Mount.
Matthew,
Yeah, Matthew chapter 5. It says, in it's 5:38. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist him who is evil. Rather, whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. And to him who wishes to sue you to take your tunic, yield to him your cloak also. And whosoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. And he who asks you to give, from him who wants to borrow, do not turn away. For you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor. You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your neighbor and pray for those who persecute you." That's Jesus explaining how we should address that now. So in other words, we have mercy. We don't have those same, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We don't take that.
So upon being asked about, hey, what do you think about capital punishment? This guy killed this guy, and he's going to get the death penalty. He should get the death penalty, be put to death. So that is,
What is my opinion about that?
yes,
Well,
scripture.
that's man's laws, and they're not following, I mean, the Bible, I think the laws are structured in a lot of ways, like Floyd was mentioning, after the Ten Commandments and things like that. But this, what Jesus is talking about, is us as Christians, how we should live. So, you know, that would, to me, that would be more of a dilemma if in particular somebody in my family was murdered and the prosecutor came to me and asked me, do you want to pursue the death penalty or not? Then I would have to decide whether I wanted to, and I would probably be inclined not to.
Yeah, but that's not based, that would be based on the laws that are written.
But as far as my general feeling about the death penalty in general, I, you know, I would probably not express my opinion about that. Yes.
Yeah, well, just to solve, based on the laws.
If you obey what the Lord wants, if you take a man's life, you owe the Lord his life.
I see.
That's my interpretation. Now, civil law, or law that man, you know, that the Lord has given to the outside world, that judge us according to us, they're supposed to protect us on all that stuff. And so that's why you have people that sue people, but the Lord says, if somebody offends you, and if it don't concern you, that it hurts you so much that you should not sue your brother. It didn't say anything about not suing an outside person who hurt you or harms you, because there's civil law for that. That's why we have judges. And that's why we have a United States government or local government and laws that are made. See, the Lord is in charge of that too, by the way.
And that's why I was basing, because we were basing and reading some of the commandments. And so that's what brought because it's a subject of today of, you know, people being murdered, and then they're talking about, well, what should they do with them? And then the laws that have been changed from state to state on
Death penalty.
on the death penalties and things like that. Let's see, we're reading this here in Exodus here, and okay, where's that in the times of Christ? You know, the New Testament. And so, as far as, you know, the reference from the Old Testament to the New Testament, because this, for me, and my understanding, my learning, it's been really, really nice to put things together. So this is where that came from. Wow. And that's kind of exciting to me to know why.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that this is where, you know, the death penalty comes from and things like that. But, you know, with the Lord, he always sought to have mercy on people. Remember the Pharisees, I think it was the Pharisees scribe, somebody brought him a woman who they had found in the very act of committing adultery, which penalty for that was death. She was stoned.
Stoning.
And so what did he say? He said, well, whoever is without sin, go ahead and throw the first stone. And nobody did. And so, you know, to me, that's like, you know, I agree with Roger. If you kill somebody, you owe your life. But at the same time, who hasn't? Because we read in Matthew where Jesus went through the law, and he says, you've heard that if you should not murder, and if you murder, you know, whatever. But he says, now if you think of if you curse somebody in your mind, you're guilty of murder. Okay, well, we're all guilty of that, and we all want mercy. And so, for me as a Christian, I would rather have mercy on people than invoke, even if I may have a right to say, I can do this. I can go and find in the law, and I'm justified to do this. I would rather not do it and let the Lord, vengeance is the Lord's. Like, if the Lord wants to kill him, he certainly could, while doing that, they could stop. He could drop it out of a heart attack immediately.
But not you being a part of the law.
But I don't
that
want to be
person
the
to
one
death. Right.
that puts my hand into it and does it. And I've been reading in 1 and 2 Samuel, and David was very much like that. They would want him to go kill his enemies, and he said, you know, they kept telling him to get to kill Saul, and God kept delivering him into his hand. He was able to walk into the tent and take his spear. Saul went into a cave and didn't know that he was there, and all the people with him kept saying, Jehovah's delivered him to you, take it. He says, he's the Lord's anointed, I'm not putting a hand to him. The Lord will take care of him when he wants to. And he did. He eventually killed Saul, and he killed Jonathan, and he delivered the kingdom over. And so I think that, for me as a Christian, I would rather let the Lord do what he wants to do.
Well, he tells us that, he said, vengeance belongs to him. Period.
Mhm.
We can't take things in our own hand.
Because I want mercy. I need mercy.
Mhm.
And so I need it, and I want it as much as I can possibly get it, and the Lord he'll deal with everything. Everything's gonna be taken care of.
See, that's what I need to satisfy me, as far as, giving me a good understanding. Because, it's just like, I'm not gonna go too far off, but as far as, the Old Testament says, give a writing of divorcement and divorce. And then, it says, in the New Testament of being equally yoked before you get married in the first place. And then in Corinthians 7, it speaks of, you should not, the divorce, not unless there's, the wife, husband, or wife are unbelieving, or
It's
say something.
Unless she commits adultery.
Yeah, unless there's fornication is the only reason. And Jesus said that. So Jesus said in the same part that we were talking about, he said that, they used to give Moses allowed for a certificate of divorce, but that was because of hardness of heart. And he said that if you divorce your wife and someone else marries her, that person commits adultery. And so, because it was always meant for, them to be together. And so, this is why we need mercy, because we're all breaking the law. The law that he established in the New Testament, we are all breaking that law, because it has even to do, because it says, if you, not committing adultery, that's fairly easy not to do, right? But not looking at another person with lust, that's a little more difficult. And if you've done that, Jesus said it's the same thing.
Yeah, well, in other words, there's no level of sin because sin is sin.
That's right.
Yeah, and we're all guilty of sin, and it is only by the Lord's mercy that because we're all worthy of death. And the only reason we didn't get it, we aren't gonna get it, is because of his mercy. And so we should show mercy.
I think it's kind of important that we go back to Exodus 21:1.
Oh, 21:1?
Yeah.
What is it?
These are the ordinances if you buy a Hebrew slave. Then he goes on and lists all those things.
Hmm.
So it's much like when we're told you don't take a brother to court. Okay, because it's within the kingdom, it's within us. And there are issues outside of this. This is why they have no problems killing or whatever pagan people, because they weren't in the brotherhood. So I think it's important that we realize that he's giving this to them, and then he gave us our thing. Well, we don't take a brother to court. We don't hit them. If we did, we'll come and say, my goodness, I'm sorry. What can I do? If I take your eye, well, I gotta pay for that. And if I take it out of anger, or if there's an accident, well, somehow we gotta resolve the issue. Instead of taking me to court for $5 million that I don't have, because you lost your eye. And so that means that we have to be forgiving towards each other, because there is the outside world. We live in a tent, if you will. We live in a tent. And inside that tent, we have all of these things that we must observe. And so he's saying here to them, if you buy a Hebrew slave, these are the rules. Okay, I just kind of want to point that out, like it's the same thing in modern Christianity about taking your brother to court for whatever, or killing, or whatever. That has to do with brotherhood, not the entire world. The entire world You remember that before Moses, during the time of Abraham, before Abraham, they had the natural law. And all the Ten Commandments is a codified natural law. This is why you're not supposed to do these things. It's in you. It's in people to know that you're not supposed to kill somebody. It is in people that you know you're not supposed to steal. It's in them. So that became the natural law. We have that now as what Roger called the civil law. In, you know, we're only, we will adhere to the civil law as long as it doesn't violate the brotherly law, the Christian law, if you will.
Just one more question. I want to know, is there another scripture in the New Testament or a reference from the scriptures where it says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, thus says the Lord?
In the New Testament?
Yes, and that's according to, you know, the Ten Commandments also. That I like what you just, you know, that brought me, clarified what,
In the New Testament,
It's very quiet.
well,
That's what you got a concordance for.
yeah, you can look at Romans 12:19. It says, do not avenge yourselves, beloved, but give place to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the
There you
Lord.
go.
And again, in Hebrews 10:30, it also quotes that. Okay, let's move on. I think it's Joyce's turn to read. And-
Exodus 21:28. And if an ox gores a man or woman to death, the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall be guiltless. But if the ox was accustomed to goring previously, and its owner had been warned, but he would not keep it in, and it killed a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall also be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on the owner, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is imposed upon him. If either it gores a son or it gores a daughter, according to this judgment it shall be done to him. Exodus 21:32. If the ox gores a male servant or a female servant, 30 shekels of silver shall be given to his master, and the ox shall be stoned. And if a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, the owner of it shall make restitution. He shall give silver to its owner, and the dead animal shall be his.
Exodus 21:35. And if one man's ox injures another so that it dies, then he shall sell the live ox and divide its price. And they shall also divide the dead animal. Or if it is known that the ox was accustomed to goring previously, am I?
yeah,
Okay, previously, and its owner would not keep it, he shall surely be, give restitution for an ox, and a dead animal shall become his. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If the thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guiltness for him. If the sun has risen upon him, there shall be no blood guiltness for him. The thief shall indeed make restitution. If he has nothing, he shall be sold for what his theft. If what he has stolen is actually found alive and in his possession, whether ox, donkey, or sheep, he shall restore double.
Exodus 22:5. If a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed, that is, he lets his animal loose and it grazes in another man's field, from the best of his own field and from the best of his own vineyard, he shall make restitution. Exodus 26. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that the stacked grain or the standing grain or what is grown in the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall surely make restitution. Exodus 22:7. If a man gives to his neighbor silver or goods to keep, and it is stolen out of a man's house, if the thief is found, he shall restore double. If the thief is not found, then the owner of the house shall come near to God to determine whether or not he laid his hand on his neighbor's goods for every case of transgression, whether concerning an ox, concerning a donkey, concerning a sheep, concerning clothing, or concerning any lost item about which one says, "This is it." The case of both parties shall come before God. He whom God declares guilty shall restore double to his neighbor.
Exodus 22:10. If a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any animal to keep, and it dies or is injured or driven away, with no man seeing it, the oath of Jehovah shall be between them both, that he has not laid his hand on his neighbor's goods, and its owner shall accept it, and he shall not make restitution. But if it was certainly stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it was torn in pieces, let him bring it as evidence. He shall not make restitution for that which is torn. Exodus 22:14. And if a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it is injured or dies while its owner is not with it, he shall make full restitution. If its owner was with it, he shall not make restitution. If it was hired, only the hiring fee is due. Exodus 22:16. And if a man reduces a virgin who is not engaged and lies with her, he shall surely pay a dowry for her to become his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay silver according to the dowry of virgins. Exodus 22:18. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god, except to Jehovah only, shall be devoted to destruction. And you shall not wrong a sojourner, nor shall you oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt.
Exodus 22:22. You shall not afflict any widow or orphan. If you afflict them at all, and if they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my anger will be kindled, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children orphans. Exodus 22:25. If you lend silver to my people, to the poor among you, you shall not be to him as a creditor. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's garment as a pledge, you shall return it for his skin. On what shall he lie down? And when he cries to me, I will hear, for I am gracious.
Exodus 22:29. You shall not delay to offer the fullness of your harvest, of the overflow of your trusses. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me, and you shall do the same with your ox and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. Exodus 22:31. And you shall be holy men to me, and you shall not eat any flesh that is torn by a beast in the field, and you shall not throw it to the dogs. Exodus 23:1. You shall not bear a false report. Do not join your hand with a wicked man, for he is a malicious witness. You shall not follow up a multitude to do evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute, that as to turn aside after a multitude that pervert justice. You be partial as a poor man and his dispute. 23:4. If you come unto your enemy's ox and his donkey goes astray, and you should surely bring it back to him. And if he sees a donkey of one who hates you, lying down under his burden, you shall refrain from leaving it to him. You shall surely release it with him.
Exodus 20:6. You shall not pervert the justice due your needy neighbor in his dispute. Keep far away from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent and righteous. For I will not justify the wicked man, and you shall not take a bribe. For a bribe blinds those whose eyes are open and perverts the word of the righteous. And you shall not oppress a sojourner, for you know the feelings of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Exodus 20:10. In 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its produce. But the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the needy of your people may eat, and what they leave, the animals of the field may eat. You are to do the same with the vineyard and with the olive grove. 6 days you shall do your work, and on the 7th day you shall cease from work, so that your ox and the donkey may have rest. And the son of your female servant and the sojourner may be blessed.
I am totally lost.
23:13,
Exodus 20.
page 6.
I went the wrong way.
It's on page 6.
23:13.
Now concerning everything which I have said to you, take heed to yourselves and do not mention the name of your gods, nor let their name be heard out of your mouth. 3 times a year you shall hold a feast to me. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread as I commanded you. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread at the appointed time in the month of Abib. For in it you came out of Egypt, and no one shall appear before me empty. And you shall keep the feast of the harvest of the first fruits of your labors from what you sow in the field, and the feast of ingathering. At the end of the year, when you gather in the fruit of your labors out of the field, 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord Jehovah.
23:18. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with any unleavened, nor shall the fat of my feast remain all night until the morning. The first of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring into the house of Jehovah your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Verse 20. I am now sending an angel before you to keep you in the way and bring you into the place which I have prepared. Be careful before him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. But if you will indeed listen to his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy of your enemy and an advisory to your advisors.
Who's the angel that he's sending before him?
What now?
Who's the angel that God is sending before the people?
Well, imagine it's going to end up being Jesus.
Who will be Jesus? One, you want to read the next part?
For my angel will go before you and bring you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. You shall now bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars into pieces. 25. And you shall serve Jehovah your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from your midst. No one shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days.
Exodus 23:27. I will send my terror before you and will throw into confusion all the people to whom you will come. And I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land becomes desolate, and the animals of the field multiply against you. Little by little, I will drive them out from before you until you have become fruitful and inherit the land. And I will set your border from the Red Sea even to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out from before you, and shall make no covenant with them or with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you.
And so we just read this whole law, and Jesus is going to sum up exactly how we fulfill the law.
Matthew 22:36. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Matthew 7:12. Therefore, all that you wish men would do to you, so also you do to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Galatians 5:14. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Okay, so just real quick, so this really makes gives me a good understanding of mercy because of all the laws, which, pertain to the law, and then the times of the New Testament, where we have the mercy of Christ as far as the different punishments of the laws that were written back then.
Yeah, and I was even thinking about, the discussion we had about capital punishment and things like that. Well, based on what it says here, it says, therefore all that you wish men would do to you, so also you should do to them. So you should think about, what if you committed a murder? What would you want to happen? Would you want to be put to death? Would you want to be without possible parole? Would you want to have, go to prison but have an opportunity
You want mercy?
demonstrate, that you are remorseful for what you've done and you're changed? That's what you should want. Whatever you want for yourself, this is what you should want. You should put yourself into that position and say, if I was there, what would I want? And I'm always going to want mercy. I would like mercy. And so if that's the case, then we need to show mercy to other people. Even though we may have a right, we may be able to say, well, yeah, I want this, and it's terrible, but like, do I want that to happen to me if I'm in that situation? Most people just think, well, I never do that, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But we need to think about what if we did. Okay, what is the
So
first?
you want, in other words, don't do it.
Well, there's the laws for accidents and there's the law for intention. It tells us all through here. If you intend to do it, you're really at fault. If it's an accident, that's a different story. You never
Yeah,
did.
yeah, I understand that. But we should show mercy to other beings, instead of going ahead and killing them, don't do it.
Yeah, like those.
Oh, yeah, you
Or
should
do
do
you
it.
want somebody to kill you?
Right, yeah. that's
But
what-
then also that falls into prejudice.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about.
And what the Lord have been, okay, so what is the first and greatest commandment?
Love your Lord God, your eye, all your heart, with all your mind.
That is the first and greatest. What's the next commandment?